It's the Shoal Weekly Podcast with Joe and Charlie. How you doing, Chaz?
I'm good, mate. Yourself?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you. Ben as well. You doing good?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you very much.
You looked very worried there. You thought I'd forgotten about you, but you are with us this week. As always, do be sure to follow our socials for updates and news. Hit that notification bell, drop us a like or a follow. We really appreciate the support. Our podcast has been doing well recently. Last week, we were doing Zack Snyder's Justice League. It was a great episode. Had a lot of views so far. So if you haven't listened to that, what are you doing? Go and listen to it. Go grace your ears with our voices for that one. If you have been following along on our socials this week, you'll know that we are going to be talking about Gladiator. It's a nice little precursor to our upcoming festival. We did post the teaser post of that a couple weeks ago. We will have more news coming exactly today. So as soon as this podcast drops, we will be posting some news about the April festival, The Greatest Showman, all about Academy Award-winning films. So before we get to that, it's been a good week, lads. Have you managed to watch anything decent that we can talk about? Chaz?
So I've been reading 11/22/63, which is a Stephen King novel. Joe's recommended Stephen King to me numerous times, and I finally picked a book up. It's all about a guy who goes back in time and tries to stop the JFK assassination. The book is mint, and I watched the series, and it's so disappointing. It's so they changed so much from the book, and it feels so rushed compared to how the book took it steady and really took you into the world. But I mean, definitely give the book a read and watch the series if you want to be disappointed.
This isn't a book podcast, Chaz.
No, but we're turning it into that. I'll come with a different book each week now.
Yeah. No, I've seen reviews for the series, and they all say it's really not great at the start, but apparently the end of it is pretty decent. So maybe you'll have to persevere.
Yes, yeah.
As you have to do with all Stephen King material. It's just so long and chunky.
He lost me even in that book. He lost me a bit in the middle. I was a bit like, just get on with it, man. But all his books are so long. Like,
I know you've moved on to It now, haven't you?
Yeah. Another chunky boy.
It's a chunky one, but it's good. It's
no
good.
doubt we'll have a review on it soon on the podcast, because this is a book. This is a book podcast now.
You've been watching anything decent this week, Ben?
Gladiator. No, not anything else this week. It's a busy one.
Fair. That's fair. I managed to catch another 2000 film, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? It's a nice little. It's a comedy by the Coen brothers. If you haven't seen it, it's really good. It's actually an allegory. I wouldn't say it's an adaptation. It's more of like an allegory for Homer's Odyssey. It's a very, very old book.
Homer Simpson.
No, sadly not.
Oh, right.
It's not a Matt Groening film, but no, it's great. It's got George Clooney in it in quite an obscure role, and it's very strange. It's one of the Coen brothers' weirdest ones, which is
saying something.
A bit of saying something. Yeah, absolutely. But anyway, obviously this week we're talking about Gladiator. It's quite nice to think about how this film was the first Best Picture winner of the 21st century going into our festival next week, where we're looking at Academy Award winning films. So it's kind of worked out for the best. I mean, it's been a few years since I've seen it, but I just want to have a conversation about has it sort of stood the test of time, because we had a chat briefly before we started recording, and we had different opinions. So Chaz, what did you think of it after not having seen it for so many years?
I was quite excited to get back to it, because it's been ages since I watched it. It must have been a good 5 years. I didn't really click with me this time. It's a great film, stunning. The acting's brilliant. It's just, I don't know, it didn't really. Maybe it's because I knew what it was going into it. It just didn't grab me the same as when I first watched it.
Do you have any idea why?
I don't know. Not really. I don't know. It's one of those things. It's just a bit boring now. I know it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. once you've seen a film, that's it, you've seen it. Or like if you've seen a certain type of film, I get the sense that, you know, like with Marvel films, you know, you've seen one, you've seen all of them.
Yeah, and I think I watched
Yeah.
this a long time ago because I had a DVD set and it had Robin Hood in it, and I think I've got those films in my head mixed up, and I just think they're amalgamated into one film. That's
Or
just
just Russell Crowe
yeah,
being,
Russell
you know,
Crowe. Yeah, yeah.
Russell Crowe.
That's one thing that I really. He's great. I think he is a good actor, but he's a very one role sort of guy, isn't he?
Yeah, he's a bit of a Liam Neeson for me as well. Like,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
that kind of action man.
You know,
But
it
yeah.
definitely works though. Like it's
Oh,
funny,
yeah,
they're
definitely.
serious. You know, there's the kind of the. I think there's quite a few of those, isn't there? Like quite a lot of like comedy actors, and they just play themselves in every film, and it's like some of them work and some of them just don't. But I liked it. I would agree. But yeah, I would agree that it kind of boring seems the wrong word. It just didn't.
It didn't click.
Quite excite me. It didn't excite me the way that I know that it used to. And I think that is just the case that it's 21 years old. I've seen it so many times. Like I know so many points of it. It's probably one of those few films where I could like ream off like the lines from it. Just you know, my name is Maximus Decimus Meridius, and like you
It's
know,
one of those other films, Avatar.
Nah, because there's just too much. That's all there is.
Well, you sent me a message last night at like 11:30, after I'd had a few to drink, just saying that, you know, you shed a tear at the end of Gladiator, and it's quite an emotional film.
Well, this is the one thing, right? And it. So for me, I'll stand by it. You know, for me, it's a 5-star film. I love it. It holds a special place. But you know what? Every single time I watch it, I can, you know, historical inaccuracies aside, because there are quite a few in the film, and I can kind of forgive it. You know, it's 2000 Hollywood. I don't think too many people are like, it has to be absolutely perfect. It's kind of, it is what it is. You know, there's only so much you can kind of hope they get right. But and I can kind of forgive it for those kind of things. But the one thing that really irritates me is at the very end. There's that beautiful scene that, you know, he's killed Commodus, and he's like dying, and he can see his wife and child in the afterlife, and he's going to them. They've got that, you know, really like iconic scene, you know, going through the field of corn, and then oh god, and then the bloody his ex-girlfriend, the Emperor's sister, comes on and does like this really corny speech, and it just every time it just riles me. I just it's the one part of the film that I just really dislike.
I'm a member of quite a few subreddits for sort of, you know, like fan edits of films, or there's one that I'm a part of, which is fixing films. And the amount of times I see, oh, here's my personal edit of Gladiator. Like, here are things that I've changed. I've taken out the ending.
That's all they've done.
Yeah, I've also taken out the incest between Commodus and his sister, and
Yeah.
I mean, there's an argument like for that, because it's a lot of scholars would argue it was somewhat historically accurate for him to have been like that, but
Still
I don't know, it's
weird.
not something I want to see. Yeah.
Yeah, it was. I think it just for me, it actually, like, the one thing that I think that did excite me was just realizing how good a performance Joaquin Phoenix did in that film. Like, it just, when you think about memorable villains, okay, when you just picture your head and just think, right, who is like the most evil villain and like the most twisted person that you can just hate so easily, like that for me just puts it up there, because I was just like, he's killing his dad. He's trying to get it on with his sister, who's like trying to just brush him off because she's absolutely terrified of him killing her like randomly. And it's just, you know, it's absolutely terrifying. And he's so disturbed as well, like the character, and you just believe it. You know, there's no kind of element of, oh, he's just like, you know, faking it, or he's just putting on a face. Like, you know, the tears and the tantrums, like it just brings it all. It's just a very well-rounded villain.
It's like the Joker, but in like ancient times.
I want to know what Joker is in Latin now. I mean, to praise Gladiator, you know, we started off sort of saying how it, you know, it didn't grab our attention 20 years later. I think Gladiator for me is sort of the start of the modern epic.
definitely has Ben-Hur vibes and stuff like that, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
exactly, you read my mind. Watching it, I can see so many not only practical but also storytelling similarities between that and Ben-Hur and Spartacus by Kubrick. All of those, really great epics that sort of lasted until the 1980s, and then obviously everyone just got so obsessed with sci-fi and superheroes that you got to remember this was only a year after things like The Matrix. So 2000 was such a futuristic year, of technology, and to get this film that was, that obviously employed those uses of modern technology, CGI and some amazing, sort of green screen elements, to then use them to bring back the epic. I think at the moment it probably it does seem like it can't excite us or surprise us anymore. But I reckon give it another 50 years and Gladiator will have the same vibe as Ben-Hur does. Because when you watch Ben-Hur, it doesn't excite you, but you respect it so much.
I think that's it. That's exactly the right word.
Yeah.
Respecting it, like like I said, like it didn't quite give me the excitement factor, but I know it did, and I know what when I first watched it, the emotions and the respect for it. That's definitely the right word. Like you
Yeah.
kind of you know what it's like, and like I said, it still got me. Like at the end, I was still like, I know exactly what's coming, but I'm still emotional. It still like creeps up on you, and it's so yeah, it's definitely I have nothing but praise for it. So I still love it.
You can definitely see like the merits of it and where it does shine. It's just, I think, as Joe said, it's hard to see that in a cinematic environment that's so dominated by even more action and even more gruesomeness that it's just hard to see past that at the minute.
Yeah, going back to what you were saying, Ben, about Commodus as well, like being this amazing movie villain. Side note on that as well, we're going to be watching a film during the festival that we'll announce very soon, that has an equally disturbing villain that you will hate even more. I think I'd argue that you'd hate even more. But no, going back to my point, to me, there's a lot of really nice sort of dualism in the film. There's sort of like two of everything. The way that the film starts with Marcus running his fingers through the grass, through the wheat, and then the film kind of
Like
ends.
Theresa May.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, I forgot about that joke. Running through the fields of wheat. There we go. You heard it here first. Marcus the Tory. Yeah, no, and so there's a lot of these nice kind of like full circle moments in the film, but I really like how Commodus and Marcus are both two sides of the same coin, and I think that's what makes Marcus such an effective protagonist and Commodus such an effective villain, is that they both kind of suffer the same thing throughout the film, which is grief. Marcus has lost his family and his place in his emperor's army, and
Commodus loses his mind.
yeah. Well, he also loses his father as well. So when it comes to Commodus and Maximus, coming head to head, they're coming from the same point, and they're both coming together for the idea of vengeance. But the big difference between Commodus and Marcus, and something that's explored kind of subtly throughout the film, is that Stoic philosophy, Stoicism, of looking inward and processing your emotion. And Maximus is like a really good example of a good Stoic, whereas Commodus isn't, because he has all this new power, but he was so obsessed with pleasing his father and the people, getting the approval and the love of the people. Whereas Maximus, he's driven by vengeance, but he knows that true freedom is in sort of feeling your feelings, but then using them as a force for good and change, and expecting that you you're not going to be loved by everyone in your life, and that's okay. And I really like that in the film, because obviously at the start of the film we actually meet quite a prolific Stoic philosopher, Marcus Aurelius. He's the emperor at the start, but he wrote a lot of Stoic philosophy. He wrote Meditations, very famous philosophy book, and there's a quote here from him that I really, really like, that kind of reflects Commodus and Maximus's relationship in the film. And he says, "For the necessity thou must be envious, jealous, and suspicious of those who can take away those things, and plot against those who have that which is valued by thee. And besides, he must often find fault with the gods." And that's a really nice quote to kind of encapsulate Commodus, because I would argue he's more of a prisoner throughout the film than Maximus is. Maximus is obviously very, obviously a prisoner, but he's not trapped in his own mind. He's very like outward, whereas Commodus is completely inward, and he's so trapped and terrified of his own mind. He lets his mind take over, and I think at the start of the film, his father Marcus sees that, and that's the reason why he doesn't want him to be emperor, because he doesn't think inwardly with the goal of using his emotions and feelings as a force for good for the people, which is something that Marcus prided himself on, and something that he sees in Maximus as well, and not in Commodus. So just that kind of implementation of that Stoic philosophy, it just creates this really amazing relationship between this hero and villain that we hadn't really seen before in Hollywood. Well, maybe that's hearsay. Maybe it has happened before, but to my knowledge, I've never seen such a convincing relationship between good and evil, which is essentially, like I said, it's two sides of the same coin, grief, and it just goes to show how much grief can affect us in different ways.
It's interesting. These points you've made are interesting. When I was watching it, I was this time round more focused on the spiritual aspects and also like the political, like culture surrounding the characters, rather than when I was younger. I was like, oh, it's got cool fights in it, like.
Yeah.
But now it's because I wanted more of especially the political bit of it. Like, I'd love like another film to look at the way the Senate is active and all the spiritual aspects around.
Out of context right now, it sounds like we're talking about the Star Wars prequels.
Yeah.
We've come to appreciate them more as we get older. But yeah, no, I think, and that's probably going back to the point we were making before about how maybe it doesn't have that wow factor of when we watched it when we were younger, because when we were younger, we were looking for that kind of spectacle.
Yeah.
Whereas now, I guess we were looking for more like the nuanced aspects. But yeah, I think it's interesting. It's definitely a film you can approach from a lot of different angles. And the fact that people are still making video essays about it now, the fact that we're here talking about it 21 years later, just goes to show that it's going to be a timeless film.
We should also mention the soundtrack is a rip-off of Pirates of the Caribbean.
even though it came out before Pirates of the Caribbean, yeah.
Before, yeah. But no, Hans Zimmer's tune, Charlie and I, we've had the pleasure of actually hearing it live twice.
Yeah.
We went to go see Hans Zimmer with his orchestra live in London and Manchester.
Good.
Yeah, it puts the hairs on the back of your neck upright for sure.
Like that, the tune at the end is particularly top notch.
Mm-hmm.
I think the thing I like about it is that at the start you've kind of got that like joke. It sounds a bit like Pirates of the Caribbean because it kind of goes up and down. It's a bit melodic, but as you get further in the film, you get more and more snippets of that end soundtrack, the really sad, somber, like if you hear it, you think Gladiator. It's very, very iconic, I think now. But it's like as the film progresses, you just get little tastes of it in different moments, and yeah, it's just sick. It's great. It's awesome.
Didn't he win the Oscar for that?
Interestingly,
Like that was his first Oscar, wasn't it? Or only Oscar, maybe. Or did he get one for like Madagascar or something stupid like that?
Hans Zimmer.
Who, Hans Zimmer or Russell Crowe? I don't think Russell Crowe was in
Russell Crowe did the soundtrack.
He got nominated for Best Original Score. He didn't win it.
Ah.
Okay.
he won The Lion King. That's the one you're thinking of.
Mhm.
Is that the only soundtrack he's actually won at the Oscars?
Yeah,
Yes.
it's mental,
it's
isn't
it?
it's a
God.
crime.
And he's got Dunkirk nominated, Interstellar nominated, Inception nominated, Sherlock Holmes nominated. Oh my gosh.
I think Interstellar should have won Best Soundtrack the year it came out. But then again, I'm not sure what else it was up against. That was a good year, I think, for soundtracks. But anyway, I think we're getting sidetracked a bit. We'll save this for the Academy Award Festival. I was just reading, interestingly, that Mel Gibson was offered the lead role and turned it down.
Oh wow!
At the time, he was 43 and felt he was too old to play Maximus. But
How old was Russell Crowe? Surely he's like
at the time,
getting on for that.
no idea. He was born in 1964. So
he would have been. So he's 56 now. So take 21.
Yeah.
So 55, 45. So he was even older than 43.
Yeah.
Wow.
He was in pretty good shape for that film, actually. Though he was in pretty good.
What funny.
Yeah.
And a native Kiwi as well. He's a New Zealander.
Or he's the Spaniard in this case.
Yeah, I didn't get that. Why? That's the only bit I didn't really get. Like, why were they calling him a Spaniard?
So he was from Spain. So the whole in my head, I knew it. Like, this, do you ever watch a film and think I knew more about this film than the film is now telling me? You know, I got that feeling.
Yeah.
But it's to do with he rides from Germany to Spain, and then somehow gets across the coast to Africa. But actually, I'm pretty sure it was Africa. But the thing is, a lot of South Spain at that time was quite Muslim. It wasn't very Christian, just because it's just the way that the Roman Empire was at that point. But it's difficult to tell. It's still a film.
Ben just doing quick Googles.
We'll fill the time with me and Joe. We'll do like
stall. Come
on. Russell Crowe actually became really good friends with Richard Harris, who plays Marcus Aurelius. If you recognize Richard Harris, you'll know he played Dumbledore in the first two Harry Potter films before his untimely death in 2002. But yeah, no, they became really good friends on the set. Sadly, a friendship that only lasted a couple of years. And then on the other hand, Oliver Reed, whose character has left my mind. Sorry, the slave owner, the other guy. Funnily enough, he took an instant dislike to Russell Crowe, despite Russell Crowe and Richard Harris being really good friends, and Reed and Harris being good friends.
I feel like it would be impossible to dislike Russell Crowe. Like it just seems like such a nice bloke.
Well, I mean, Oliver Reed didn't get much of a chance to change his mind because he died during during filming. So if you'll notice, a bit of CGI wizardry for you here. The scene where he breaks Maximus out of prison and he's talking to him through the bars. Oliver Reed is dead at that point in real life.
Oh shit!
And that's basically B-roll footage that's been superimposed, and they had to rotoscope it and superimpose it into that scene. They had like a stand-in for Russell Crowe to reference.
Wow.
It caused a lot of issues because obviously seldom are films shot, linear.
Yeah.
So there was quite a few instances where they had to get a stand-in for Oliver Reed's character and have the stand-in sort of stand in the shadows, wearing the same costume so that you never quite saw his face, or there's a lot of doubles. But yeah, died halfway through filming, and obviously Ridley Scott had a big issue there trying to finish a film, and they didn't have time to recast and go back and film scenes that would have added a lot to the budget. So they just had to do a couple of quick rewrites, take a few scenes out that he was supposed to be in, and then just try and tie him up by doing that prison escape scene with some B-roll footage.
I suppose that them doing that has helped pave the way for things like the Princess Leia in Last Jedi and Rogue One.
Was that good though?
Well, I know, but I mean, like,
there's a big debate to be had, isn't there, about morally, is it right to
Oh yeah, I just mean in for the story of Star Wars, I didn't think it was any
Yeah.
good, but morally, yeah, it's a tricky one.
If you
It's
go back
grey
and watch
area,
that
isn't it?
scene though, if you go back and watch that scene again, you'll actually notice how kind of unsettling it is. The gladiator scene, I mean, there's something off about it. And when you notice that the lighting on Oliver Reed just does not match the lighting of a prison, that's what will click in your head, and you'll be like, oh, okay, he's not actually there. And it was one of the first instances where it's not the first time where an actor has died halfway through filming something, but it was the first time that they had the technology to sort of essentially make it a non-issue. So I think it was the first major blockbuster to essentially bring a dead person back to life through film, which has actually become quite popular in recent years. But then it morally, that's a very big conversation to have. At the time when Rogue One came out, that was just a case of de-aging Princess Leia, so that wasn't really an issue. But Peter Cushing, who played Grand Moff Tarkin in 1977, obviously he's been dead a long time, so they had to get the permission from his estate to get that
I suppose if
likeness.
the estate give them permission, then it's not as much of a problem.
Yeah, even then, if they do give permission, there's still, I think, to me, there's still like a moral discussion to be had. Like, is it right to get another actor to essentially embody the spirit of someone who's dead? Is it disrespectful, or is it preserving them? Is it preserving their memory? But
I mean, you could say the same about like biopics and stuff like that, though.
Mm-hmm. But I suppose that's using real footage, though, isn't it? Or
not if you think of like what's the guy who did Freddie Mercury, played Freddie Mercury. So like that's.
Oh, I see, a biopic. Sorry, I thought you meant like a documentary.
No.
Well, the thing with the biopic is that's just someone doing an evocation as opposed to like an impersonation.
Impersonating, yeah.
So that's not really a grey area, I don't think, because unless the person you're evoking is of sort of a dubious nature. But I think actually bringing the likeness of someone to that kind of uncanny place, bringing them back to life, is something different entirely. Like, they could have just got someone who looked like Peter Cushing to play the role.
Yeah.
Or recently in The Mandalorian, spoilers if you haven't seen the end of season 2. Charles, have you seen it?
I haven't. I'll
okay.
Not listen.
Well, they could have cast someone younger to play Luke Skywalker, but they de-age him digitally instead. So that there's examples all around us at the moment of that, and I think if CGI continues to get more effective, are we going to see more of that? Like, in 10, 15 years, are we going to be seeing Sean Connery playing James Bond again, exactly how he looked in the 60s, with the permission of his estate? I don't know, that's weird to me to think of.
It's like they do like hologram concerts, don't they, of people that have passed away and stuff. I think they did at Coachella one year. They did Tupac.
Yeah, they did with who was it, with Drake or Dr. Dre or something?
Dr. Dre, I think it was. Yeah. And Snoop Dogg, weirdly.
Yes, yeah. But, and then they did Freddie Mercury at the 2012 Olympic,
which is
ceremony
that is
as
strange.
well.
I think.
Yeah.
Trying
to I don't know. It feels almost kind of
it's a bit gimmicky.
It's a bit manipulative as well. Yeah, I think that's a good word. It feels a bit manipulative to, especially in the case of Gladiator. I think that's more forgivable because it was an issue and it was unsolvable. The actor died during shooting, but yeah, like to have Freddie Mercury at the 2012 Olympic opening ceremony, even though it was old footage, it wasn't portrayed in that way. If they basically just had a recording of Freddie Mercury, fine, but because they had him interacting with the crowd, it was like a ghost. He was like a ghost essentially.
Yeah, but the Queen parachuted in, so it's all right.
Yeah,
James Bond the whole thing.
parachuted in with
forgive the whole scene. Well, anyway, to bring it back to Gladiator, I have actually gone away and found out exactly where they were meant to set it. So they get the little subtitle on the screen. It says the Zucabar province or whatever, however the hell you want to say that. But basically, it's modern day Algeria. So yeah, they carted him from Africa. They carted him from Spain into Africa, and then yeah, that's it.
So it was in Germany at the start.
No, it was Germany at the start.
And then he rode on a horse to Spain.
Yeah, he rode from Germany to Spain. And
Mental.
he got carted from Spain.
No wonder he was knackered when he got there.
Yeah, because he had the two horses because he was swapping horses. And
Right.
They both died.
I mean, it'd be a few days ride.
A few days ride to Gondor.
Well, it's no different from Gandalf taking Pippin to Gondor. That's 3 days from Rohan.
Well, actually, it's quite cool because so I'm a bit of a Roman history geek, and the Romans actually had a huge system of basically it's kind of like you can think of it almost like a horse train setup. So essentially, along any given route, there would be stations for horses, and anybody bearing an imperial seal could basically travel down the road and then just swap horses every half day. So they could basically just full on gas the horse out in 3 hours, change horses, and just keep going, which kind of makes so look it's plausible. They did quite well in tying some historical accuracies in to the film, which
you said there was a few inaccuracies. Do you know what they were in particular?
If you see, it's one that really kind of when I saw it, I was quite shocked. But in the first time we go underneath the Colosseum and they've got all the helmets and the swords and everything all laid out in the center of the room, one of the helmets is actually an Anglo-Saxon helmet, which it didn't exist. It only existed 200, 300 years later. And it's
wow.
This iconic Anglo-Saxon helmet. And that really threw me when I saw that. I was like, really?
Surely they've got people on a film like this to spot that stuff.
Yeah, I'm not sure. And then also I don't know, but maybe they just had it as a prop.
Yeah, but when a massive film company is giving you $200 million and they say, nah, just put it in because it looks good. You're not going to be like, but all the historical inaccuracies.
Yeah, I know.
Unless you're Nolan, then you blow up an actual ship.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it was all right. It was good though. There was a couple of others. Some of the swords are really strangely sized. They weren't accurate to historically, to what they were historically. But some of the touches were really cool. Also, the CGI of Rome it always throws me off because it just looks wrong in terms of how Rome should technically have been laid out. But again, that's just me being a bit of a history buff.
I think actually they use a lot of old-fashioned matte painting techniques because of the time they had CGI for things, like single items or things that could get away with, the ship of Titanic. Most of Titanic the ship is CGI. It's only really when the ship is sinking that's a full set. And then things like Jurassic Park, it's just a couple of dinosaurs. But to CGI a whole city, it still wasn't there.
Yeah, it's huge.
So they actually used a technique that stood the test of time and just do these incredibly detailed, huge matte paintings. So yeah, I get what you mean, because it's hard to bring a full city to life, especially one that doesn't exist anymore, without showing it in a 3D way. Because when you go to an art gallery and you see a great painting of an old city, it's very 2D, obviously. So a lot of the time you find that paintings like that are exaggerated. Hills will be bigger. And I get that sense with Rome and Gladiator. Some of the buildings are so higher up than the others, when actually Rome itself in the center is quite flat, and it's the hills around.
Yeah.
That provide
it's still good though. In fairness,
still amazing,
we only see it a few times, so it's not really a major issue. But no, they did a good job.
I think that's what reminds me of a lot of the epics again. That Ben-Hur Spartacus they had a lot of matte paintings in it as well.
Even the cinematography is quite, apart from the shaky cam, it is quite steady and sharply focused, which is
it employed a lot of steady cam, which again was a relatively modern technology by 2000. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, I personally, I feel like there's not much else to say about Gladiator without talking for ages about stoicism. But something that I always think about is it's quite a sentimental film because you can relate to it a lot, whether you've lost someone or whether um, there's just so many things you can relate to, and like I said before, you can come at the film in many many different angles, and that's what's going to make it stand the test of time, I think, for another X amount of years. And I hope one day to be reviewing it again in 30, 40 years time, and hopefully it still has that same kind of not wow factor, but just people are clearly talking about it 21 years later, and I've got no doubt that people are going to be talking about it in another 21 years. So obviously, a bit of a shorter episode today for listeners at home. We are very busy getting ready for next week's festival. By the time this episode has dropped, go over to our socials at Shoal Media on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and you'll find some lovely brand new posters designed by me for the festival this week. So we are starting on the 1st of April. And just a little bit of information about that. You can join in and watch as many films as you want from the roster, as it were. Essentially, we're going to be talking about the films of the week every Sunday. Stay tuned for more news about those podcasts. They will be special podcasts. And then at the end of the festival, we are hopefully, all being well, we're going to be doing a live watch along of the Academy Awards as they're broadcast on TV. So yeah, stay tuned for all of that news. That will all be coming today once this episode is dropping. And I'm really excited for it. We've worked hard to curate this bunch of films, and there's quite a good selection on there, I think. Well, anyway, thanks for listening, everyone at home. Do be sure to subscribe, hit that notification bell, drop us a like, drop us a follow if you can. It really, really helps us out. We're slowly starting to grow in numbers, and it just makes it more and more of a pleasure to do this every week. I'm looking forward to it more and more. So yeah, thank you as always. This has been Joe, Charlie, and Ben from the Shoal Weekly Podcast, and we will see you for the Greatest Showman Festival next Sunday. Cheers. Hey, it's the Shoal Weekly Podcast with Joe and Charlie. How you doing, Chaz?
I'm good, man. How are you? Oh, fucking hell. I was going to say, how are yourself?
How are yourself?
Start again. Fuck me.